performed over 800 surgeries, and Chris is also the owner of Human 2.0, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to recovery, movement, athlete development, and building better humans. Chris also happens to have a fantastic YouTube channel that I would highly recommend, and is one of the most vibrant personalities I know, so I'm very, very happy to have Chris with us today. Our second speaker also is the great Matt Pulickal. Matt is a registered physiotherapist with a background in competing competitively in track as a track athlete. He is the owner of Ottawa Physiotherapy and Sport Clinics, and has served the World Track and Field Games, Pan American Games, NFL, CFL, CJFL, and many, many, many other athlete endeavors. So I'm very, very thankful that I have both of you on our panel today. I really appreciate your time today. So I'm going to get right into it, and part of what I want to ask first, before I get into the health professional side of things, is how has your background in sports and athletics help you in your professional life? How does that motivate? How does that?
How's my background? Well, I mean, I play a lot of sports based on what he said, and I think I have both sides of the coin. Like, I know what it's like to train. I also know what it's like to hurt myself. I also know what it's like to push the limit at the same time. Know, as I got older, when to stop. Whereas when we're younger, it's like it's only pain, right? So, I think what I learned is a fine balance between listening to your body and listening to your mind and getting to the goal without compromising the first two. Otherwise, you won't get to the goal. You won't get to your goal. That's my short answer now.
And what was your motivation? What was your motivation to participate in sports? Like, what drove you to be competitive in sports when you were younger?
This is crude, but it's totally true. Like, I'm a first generation Indian born. My mom and dad came from India. They came here. We were dirt poor, so in the beginning at least. And my dad put me in sports basically to be active. But here's the catch, okay? Because when you're East Indian, there's no such thing as being average. That's just unacceptable, okay? So Dad would say, go and have fun, but just make sure you win. And that's really the truth. So, I mean, that applies to school and everything that I grew up in. So there's my answer. Really, it's just a matter of having fun, but supposedly winning. And then always having my dad in the background telling me to make sure that I did well.
Chris, how's your background in sports and athletics kind of helped you navigate your professional life?
So, when I looked at the handout and I looked at some of the things that you talked about, grit, determination, perseverance, all those kinds of things, I thought, this encapsulates sports for me and what this has taught me. And I'm not that smart a guy. I'm a simple guy. So I like to make things. I like to think through things in simple terms. And for me, life is a game. Everything in life is a game, and everything is a sport. And what my involvement in sport as a youth taught me was all of these things that I can apply to my later life. And it's funny, the first panel talked about coaches. So I was fortunate to be coached by Larry Haler, one of the winningest CIS coaches of all time. And I hated Larry, but I love Larry, and I respect Larry. And I found myself as a coach, when I coached my son in Pee Wee, Bantam, when I coached my son in OVFL, right? I found myself saying Larryisms all the time, right? And when I think about the things that when in my life as an adult, in my life as a professional, things like when it was the darkest time, the hardest times, I find myself repeating in my head Larryisms and things that said, okay, you know what? No problem, you got this. Just put the next foot in front of the last one. Keep going, keep repeating the process. You got this. And so all of these things that I learned from sport, they all apply to my current life as a professional. And it's interesting that, yes, things have changed. The way that we coach changed. The way that we interact with our children changed. The way that our children behave has changed. But the world has not changed. And all of those things that we learn from sport are applicable today in the world, right? And we need to teach even though the way that we interact with our children has to change because they change, what we need to teach them for the world has not changed because the world, like when they leave your house, right? I recall coaching my son, and to be honest, there was things that I learned. I did not do it all right? I was hard on my son because I coached my son in the same position. I didn't want people to look at him and say that, oh, I favored him, so I was harder on my son than anybody else, right? But I did it out of love. I wanted my son to be prepared when he went out into the world, right? Because I love my son, right? And I wanted him to have the skill set. So, but when they leave your house, nobody gives a crap, right? Like, if they don't perform at their job, they don't perform, right? And so we need to give them that skill set. We need to prepare them for that. And so I think that's important. We have to think about how we do it, because kids have changed, but the world has not changed, and we need to prepare them for the world.
So in addition to that great point, Chris, in addition to that, so other than Larry, who else was a motivating factor in your life that built you that mentality that you're going to pursue and conquer the world? Is that something self-driven, self-created, or?
Larry Haler, my other football coach, high school football coach, Ron Bell. Those were two of the most instrumental people. And then my father, and it's, my father, it's funny because my father wasn't an athlete. My father was not in sports. But my father, like Matt's parents, my first generation Jamaican, right? So I have to put on a good show, and I got to perform, right? And my father always used to say to me, like, you can do anything. It doesn't matter. You can do anything. You just have to put in the work and stick with it. And that, I keep having to remind myself that all the time when things are hard. You know what? You can do it. You just have to put in the work that's necessary, remain focused, and get on with it.
So Chris, what you're saying is that one aspect that a lot of people never can forget is hearing, I believe in you. And when someone believes in you, irrespective of what that is, you know what, you feel like you can conquer the world. And that's a huge, and at least in my experience, when you have those people in place in your life, that community that believes in you, even if you're not the best and most talented athlete, that can take you very far.
For sure.
Okay. So now I'm going to go into the topic more specifically for the health professionals. So we talked a little bit about single sport specialization. As health professionals, what's your take on overexposing kids to one sport? Obsessing about they got to be great at this sport at a very early age. Matt, what would you recommend if you were to kind of go with the concept of I want to do long-term athlete development? What would be your take on what's good and bad and what people are doing now with their kids?
Great example, right? So let's say I have a degree in physics. And let's say I did graduate schools and I have a master's and PhD in physics. So probably in physics I really know my stuff. But outside of physics I pretty much know nothing else. Okay, so you take that same example and you apply it to sport. So as a physio, again, as a function of the way I was brought up, my parents put me in all sorts of sports when I was a kid. Especially gymnastics, I hated it. Okay, seriously, not too many guys like gymnastics when everyone else is playing soccer, football, or whatever the case was. But the thing was, gymnastics gave me the ability to get a really good body awareness. And we're talking like ages like 8 and below. After that, I branched out to what I would call real sports for me. But the thing is, gymnastics and all those other things that I was put in the early years really gave me a really good chance to understand what I was doing, what I can do. And a lot of kids these days, like gymnastics is ignored. My kids are in gymnastics. I'm biased as a physio and from my upbringing that I think that things like that, especially at the early years, will help your child develop basic core strength, proprioception, kinesthetic awareness, trying and failing, which is fine in gymnastics, because if you fall, the floor is padded, right? So there's all sorts of things that you can that will help them sort of overcome fear in many ways. And then branching out into other sports, I think, is really, really important. Whereas if you're only in one sport, and it's been said many times, and it's just like if you're only in one sport, then you're only potentially good in that one sport. Everything else is out to lunch. Like track and field, I'm biased because I'm a sprinter, I'm an ex-sprinter, and I'm national team and all that propaganda. But in order for me to do really well at sprinting, which is what I was good at, I was put into a long jump, I was put into a high jump, I was doing, like I was a borderline wannabe decathlete, except I just couldn't throw the shot put because I sucked, but I was really fast. But that speed translated into soccer. I played CIS soccer, I played national soccer. That speed translated into CIS basketball. I played basketball for a while. So I mean, there's all sorts of things that I developed out of learning how to create and develop and control my speed that I was able to compensate for other things I couldn't do. Like, I'm not gonna say I was a great athlete, but I sure as heck didn't like to lose. And speed was able to compensate for my lack of ball skill in soccer. I mean, if you beat me, that's fine. 2 seconds later, I'm in front of you again. So there's advantages of getting that sort of all-encompassing sort of development, so you can make up for areas that you don't have. Whereas if you're only in one sport, and let's just say your sport is, not to knock any golfers, but let's just say all you do is golf, then can you argue and say like you can you can do a 5K in under 18 minutes? Probably not. Is that relevant? Maybe not for golf, but for other sports it might be. So that's a trivial example, but that's my answer. Like I think that we all have to develop many things, and one direction at all times, 24/7, makes you potentially only good in that one direction, one sport.
So diversity is key, and especially during the early years.
Especially during the early years, and even when you get older, for sure as well. But I think the early years sets the groundwork. Whereas if I don't have the body awareness, especially from a rehab point of view, and you're dealing with people who are injured, and you ask them, hey, I want you to isolate this muscle and do this, and you explain it and show them, and they have no idea what you're doing, then you're thinking, okay, well, all right, we got to step back a little bit here. This is your shoulder, by the way, so let's try moving that and take it from there. So that's a simple example, but that's my answer.
Chris, same question, but I want to add another part, because in the US there's a report that there's a dramatic increase in ligament tears, joint injuries, concussions among child athletes. And a large part of the belief of this is because they are doing hyper-specialization. Going back to the same question posed to Matt, do you see that there's a correlation between that, as well as what's your take on just playing one sport and hyper-specialization?
So certainly I see that there's a correlation. So there's current studies to show that because of specialization sports, kids are more likely to have concussions and head injuries, more likely to have ligament tears. There was a study that was recently published, 10-year study looking at female college athletes, and looked at the incidence of ACL tears in that population. And over time, the rate of the incidence of ACL tears has increased as athletes have become more specialized in their sport. So there's two things that I sort of want to touch on with respect to that. So number one, we think about elite athletes. I was at a conference last year for the American Academy of Sports Orthopedic Surgeons, and we had a guest speaker, and the guest speaker was the author of the book, The Sport Gene. And in that book, he talked about a study that showed that in elite athletes, people think, oh, specialization, that's the key. I want, my son's going to be in the NHL. I got to start him at a young age, and only hockey. That's it, or only golf, whatever. Tiger Woods, be whatever sport it is. I got to specialize in that. The study actually showed that for the people who function at the highest level in their sport, most of those people are polyathletes. Okay, most of those people played more than one sport, and not just played more than one sport, they were good at more than one sport. And the people who specialize tend to be not as good and not as frequently hit the elite level. And part of that is largely because of the second point that I want to talk about. And Matt touched on this, in that being body awareness, having better kinematic sense and whatnot. There's a concept that I talked to you briefly about before, and something that I've been trying to sort of promote and bring forward now about movement fluency, movement mastery. Okay, and the easiest way to get people to understand this is that if I come up to you, I speak Russian, you've never spoken Russian before, and I say, speak Russian. You're like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to have a conversation with you in Russian. Speak Russian, right? This is what we're doing to our children with sport, right? Because if you play hockey, you play basketball, these are languages. These are kinematic languages, okay? When you think of Tiger Woods, he speaks golf at the highest level. When you think of Wayne Gretzky, he speaks hockey at the highest level. Michael Jordan speaks basketball at the highest level. They are the poets, they are the Shakespeare of their sport because they speak the language that well, right? Why would you teach a child, go to a child and say, speak Russian, speak poetry to me? Why would you do that? If you look at how you teach a child how to speak, we never do that, right? We teach the child the letters, we teach them the sounds, then we teach them the words, then we put them together into phrases, and then we start to make sentences. Only after we can make sentences, then we start to have a conversation. And then, once they can have a conversation, we can take it up to the next level, and then they can speak eloquently. Then they can speak well. They can speak cogently, right? Why would we do anything else when we teach our children how to participate in sport? Why are we going to them, speak Russian, speak Shakespeare? It makes no sense, right? We need to teach them the skills that Matt's talking about. They need to have the body awareness. The words and the letters and the phrases, these are core stability, your ability to know what your body is doing in space, your ability to run backwards, your ability to track a ball in space, to catch it. These are the letters, the words, the phrases, right? By being involved in multiple sports, you learn these things. You learn how to be unpredictable. You learn how to deal with unpredictable circumstances. You teach somebody only one sport specialization. They learn to move their body in a particular way. From a young age, they put stress on their body in only one way, right? The body is a very efficient machine. If you do not use it, you will lose it, right? Because the body is all about conservation of energy, right? If I don't need to apply energy to this movement, this range of motion, to this movement, then I won't. Because I don't need it, you don't use it, right? By having them involved in multiple sports, multiple different types of movement, you allow the body to maintain all of those ranges of motion. So that even when you're playing hockey, when the guy shoots it, in an unpredictable way, and you have to turn in an unusual way that you haven't trained, your body doesn't say, oh shit, time for me to like fall apart and to blow up, and time for your ACL to be torn. It says, no problem. Yeah, I got that. I did that last week at badminton. No problem, right? And this is what we want. We want to create people that can deal with unpredictable circumstances. That's what we want. And so, sports specialization, I think that's I think it's wrong, and I think we've all sort of been there, done that. But I think studies are now showing that that's not the way to go. And movement mastery, I think, is the big thing. And at our, to talk about for a second what we do, we train athletes of all levels. I have CIS athletes, I have red-black athletes that are at our facility. And we're not teaching them anything about sport-specific stuff, nothing. We're teaching them how to move in space, how to know what their body is doing in space, and most of the time, we're teaching them gymnastic skills, right? So that they can learn how to maneuver themselves, right? We're giving them the words so that they can speak the language. Then when they go out, go ahead, speak basketball, speak football, speak soccer, whatever you want to speak. We're going to give you the words, the letters, the phrases, then you can do what you want with them.
So are you saying this innate vocabulary that you create makes it almost a response so that you can prevent injury because you kind of know how to move your body in those situations or react? For sure,
I think that is a huge thing, and it's a huge component of building resiliency. There's a study that shows that for the life of me, I forget the name of it right now. But there was a study that looked at ACL prevention in soccer players. And so this is something that, this study was the start of the dynamic warm-up in soccer. And it came out of the fact that the study showed that the previous warm-up technique of, okay, we're all going to go on our lines, we're going to do the static stretching, this is what we're going to do before the game, that was wrong, that was erroneous, and that was predisposing people to ACL ruptures, right? So then they changed, because of that study, they changed to do more dynamic and more movement-based warm-up. So, for sure, I think that's an important, important.
Matt, so one of the topics I want to talk about and really get a perspective from you is being sedentary and idleness. The actual, how youth are entrenched with lower attention spans. They're very passive. All the activities they're engaged with are very passive. So, how do you feel about, and use your kids as an example would be a good one. That, I look at myself when I played sports and was competitive to now working as a developer and sitting in an office where I am sedentary 8 hours of the day. And, there's been copious amount of research where that 1 hour of the gym is not going to do anything. And is it actually going to help prevent me from heart disease? Is it going to? So how do we incorporate an active lifestyle and being active, even when it's not the gym, even when we're, sitting at the office or just doing things? Like, how does it become a key part of our mindset where we always are cognizant that we have to keep moving? Just like, go ahead, sorry.
Let me throw you some numbers and I'll give you an example. So it's actually on CBC just recently, it might have been today. If you're a parent and you have kids, for every 1,000 steps that you take, your kid will take about 250 to 300 steps. So that's an example of how if your family, also I think in the same article it said that if the parents are sedentary or obese, I think is the word they used, then yet the child also has a very high percentage of being following the same footstep. So to answer this question about sedentary, let's say you're 16 years old, and a lot of patients come into me and like, for example, we'll take I'm an osteoarthritic knee, I've been sedentary for God knows how long, I'm big, my knees are sore. Surgeon won't even do surgery on me supposedly because I'm too obese and therefore I got poor outcome. And they kind of go to me and say, like, how did I get to this way and what do I do? All right, so you said the answer that you always tell them is you got to exercise. Well, I can't exercise, it hurts. Okay, I get that. So let's back up. You're 16 years old. I'm holding a pitcher of water, and this pitcher of water is 4 liters. Okay, and at 16, the bowl, you represent the bowl, and you're a 10-liter bowl. You pour that water in. The water represents calories. Okay, 16, you can pour all that water in there as much as you want. I've got all the space, bring it. Okay, as we get older, that bowl goes from 16 liters to 15, 10, 3, 2, 1. Right? You're still pouring in the 4 liters. All right, so without that 1 liter bowl, well, 3 liters is falling over. Well, that falling over represents the calories that you ingested. Where's it going to go? Well, it's going to be stored in some capacity. The typical answer is going to be body fat. So a lot of people don't appreciate the fact that, one, as you get older, does our metabolism slow down? Yes, that's an argumentative definition, but we won't get into that one. Do I lose muscle mass? Supposedly I gain more muscle mass as I get older, sure. Now I'm a parent, I have stress, I have a job, cortisol, I'm barely sleeping now, all this stuff, that just piles up. So then I'm just reducing my bowl size as time goes on, yet my brain still thinks I'm 20. I remember when I was a kid, I'd eat 2 whole pizzas. Okay, I'll just eat 1 pizza. Okay, you see what I'm saying? But the thing is, whatever reduction you think you're doing is probably not enough because you're just still now, you're a 1 liter bowl versus that 16 liter bowl when you're 16. That's my analogy. So to answer your question, I think that sedentary or activities are correlated in the opposite way. So obviously, you have to appreciate what you're doing and then what you're ingesting all at the same time. So if a child is not active, then you should ask yourself, am I setting a good example as a parent? Because usually there's a pretty good relation to that. I mean, in a rehab point of view, I get a lot of high-end athletes as well. I mean, I can pick on the Red Blacks. I mean, they come in and I do a couple things on them and I'll say, hey, look, I need you to pay attention to this and move it that way and then retrain the movement. Boom, two steps, they got it because they understand that and they have the awareness. I take someone who, the previous example, like for the knee, very sedentary, obese, etc., and I ask him or her, okay, I just want you to try to do a partial squat or something, and they say, yeah, I don't know what that is. So, I mean, there's a huge difference there, and that bowl example and that body awareness and everything all kicks in, and it just sort of builds up.
Very, very good. What about you, Chris? What do you think about idleness and it being an epidemic, and how would you handle that situation and educate people and let them know that it is actually a very bad thing?
First, as Matt said, there has to be an awareness of how we change, how our bodies change, how our metabolism changes over time, and how our metabolism changes in response to our activity level. And certainly for the most part, unless we are adult athletes, or unless we are involved in very, very physical occupations, for the most part, our activity levels decrease as we age. So first of all, there's understanding. They have to have some understanding about that. And part of what we do is that we need to give people counsel on that so that they understand that. But the other part of that is that we have to encourage people to be active throughout their lives and make activity a part of their life. And as I had explained to you before, and as I explained to people in the one talk that we give, the sitting disease, if you look at the amount of time that you sit and that you're sedentary throughout the day, so if you include anywhere from 5 to 8 hours of sleep, you include all the time that you sit to eat, go to the washroom, to drive in your car, to sit at your desk, and all of that, it doesn't, when you add all that time up per day, it doesn't really matter how much you do in your workout. It doesn't even matter how intense your workout is. You could work yourself till you puke, drop on the ground. I don't care. I'm not going to say it's as good. It's not beneficial at all, and it's the same as you doing nothing. But doing that is not having the effect that most people think, right? Because when you look at the amount of time and you add up the hours over the week where you're active and the hours where you're not active, you see that quickly, very, very, very quickly, the amount of inactive hours grossly overshadows the amount of hours where you're active, right? So what we need to do is to have people understand that activity is a way of life. Right? It's not like, oh, I got to do this work. I got to get through my day so I can do this workout. You need to incorporate it in your workplace. We're telling people to go up. You know what? So you're sitting you're sitting in your desk. You know, take a squat break, right? Change your position. Stand at your desk, do some stuff. Sit down at your desk, do some stuff. If I gotta communicate with so-and-so across the hall, instead of sending them a text or sending them an email, walk across the hall, take the steps, do a walking lunch, you know what I mean? A walking meeting at lunchtime, right? You need to incorporate activity into your day so that basically you are changing your position, you are doing something every 20 to 25 minutes, something different. That's what your body needs. Your body is craving and asking you for nourishment, and all you have to do is get up and give it to it, right? And so we need to encourage people to do these kinds of things and have them understand that it's not all about the big workout. And that's one of the things that I want to try with our group as fitness professionals and as a fitness organization, a fitness business, is getting people to understand, you know, it's not about doing the 2-hour CrossFit workout. And I have nothing against CrossFit. You know, I have nothing against any type of workout, whatever. But it's not just about doing that. If you want to do that for the sake of doing it because you enjoy it, no problem. But that is not fitness. That is not wellness. Wellness has to be a lifestyle choice, and you just need to change the way that you interact with your environment around you.
Okay, great. So that concludes the session. Does anyone have any questions for either of our panelists? Anything health related? I do have one question, and I'll pose it to you, Matt. Absolutely, go ahead.
I just wanted to hear about Human 2.0 in the Port-Cal stuff. It's like, how do you guys use that with your clients? Do you like movement culture and that kind of thing? What kind of stuff do you do with people?
Yeah. So we've billed ourselves as Ottawa's movement facility, and certainly movement is the core of what we do. Movement skills. And so, as I had said to you, or as I had said earlier, we're trying to build a movement competency for people. So Ido Portal, for people who don't know, Ido Portal is a sort of international movement guru. So he's a movement-based specialist, and he's all about teaching people movement skills, largely based in gymnastics. But there's lots of, he takes input from gymnastics, dance, martial arts, all kinds of things. So much of what we do is based sort of around that similar concept, and we use a lot of the movements that Ido has sort of brought to the forefront. And so, yeah, we use that as the basis, but I think that we need to be movement generalists, and so we use sort of Ido's mindset as the foundation, and then we try to incorporate everything from any type of movement, whether it's parkour, dance, martial arts, whatever. We try to, whatever skill set we have, it, by nature of the trainers and the training staff that we have available, then that's what we try to incorporate. And I do think that that's that's the way most performance training and health and wellness training, I do believe that that's what we should be looking at. One of the things that is fundamental to his philosophy is weakness-based training. And so we talk to people about that. If you are good at something, if you are fast, like, I'm not going to waste time on making you fast. Being fast is important for whatever sport you are, but I want to take the things that you suck at, the things that you are no good at, and I want to make them skills. Because by virtue of that, if you are fast already, and I take these other things that you suck at and make you better at them, you will not only be faster, you will be a better mover, and you will perform better on the field. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody is a freaking athlete, right? Everybody. Okay, I don't care whether you are a grandma 75. I have 72-year-old grandmothers. I put them under the barbell, and they're doing ass-to-grass squats like everybody else, right? Because everybody needs to move better, and everybody's playing a sport all the time, and their sport may be chasing their grandkids, right? So I may need to scale it down. So maybe she's only squatting the bar, right? Doesn't matter. Everybody's an athlete all the time, right? And just the same way, all of the safety features you have on your car came from Formula One or whatever, right? They just brought it down to the masses, toned it down. That's all we're doing. Everybody's an athlete. We take everything that we use for the highest level, bring it down, scale it down, so they can do it at whatever level. I got grandmas. I have one of my athletes is a Paralympic skier. She's cerebral palsy. She does the same stuff that everybody else does. We modify it for her, but she still does the same thing. And so, yeah, I think that's very important. And at the basis of it is sort of that movement mastery and movement-based approach.
Just to keep one more question, because we're running a little bit long on this one. Matt, if you had one thing that you can drill into every single one of the patients you deal with to have them kind of have this athlete mindset for life, what would you wish that you can kind of convey to all your patients, and it would make their lives a lot easier during the recovery phase or during their training phase? Like, what's one tip you would wish that a lot of people followed? It's a loaded question, but
I think that people have to appreciate what Chris said before, is that we all develop imbalances. It doesn't make a difference what your activity is or lack of activity. We all have imbalances. So if I'm a runner and all I do is run in a straight line, then I really can't handle anything that deals with side-to-side or rotation, for example. So from a rehab point of view, the one thing I wish people would appreciate and understand is that just appreciate the fact that the body moves in all sorts of ways, and we have ways of compensating in all sorts of ways. So by the time your body's expressing pain, you've probably utilized 30 different strategies to do that same motion before it got to the stage of pain. And that's what a lot of people don't realize.
great. Well, thank you very much. Give a hand for the panelists.